So, interview Rani Chandigarh, date the 3rd of the 11th, 2019. Location, Pearly Croydon. Yeah. So, what is your full name?
Mrs. Vandana Modha.
When and where were you born?
I was born in Kenya, Mombasa, in 1966. 67, sorry.
So you said that, so you were 2.5 when you moved from Kenya to Britain, India.
To India, yeah.
So did they ever tell you why you moved?
Oh yeah, because there was a big unrest in Africa. There was a lot of unrest in Africa and lots of people were moving. My dad and my uncles had got British passports, so they could move directly to England, and we had to travel back to India.
Yeah.
Because there was at that time, because none of the family was in England, so it was like mum and like dad's. My dad and his brothers moved straight to England because to find jobs and then we all shifted down to the whole family. So it's not just my immediate family, it's like my cousins, my uncle's wives and my cousins and my grandmother all moved down to India. But there was a lot of unrest in Africa, and that was the Idi Amin when he came into rule. And he was forcing people out, and there was lots of killings going on of the Asian families, rape. Lots of things were happening, and they were ransacking or burning people alive, and these are the stories that I heard.
Yeah.
So this is one of the reasons why because of that. Then it was like, oh, we've got to move before it gets even worse.
Yeah.
So we got shipped
back
down to India.
Yeah.
Well, we lived for 5 years in India.
Yeah. Then, so was it your papa or your, do you know who moved to Kenya in the first?
It was my dad and his brothers, two older brothers and my dad. So my dad was the youngest, so all three of them moved to England, and we all came to, because we already had a house in India.
Yeah. So
we went back to our house in India, the whole family.
Yeah.
Whereas the three brothers came over here to try and see if they wanted to, they just wanted to test the territory before.
Yeah.
To see if they can find work and whether it was worth bringing the family over or not.
Yeah. Then, do you know what your dad did, or what he worked as in Kenya?
In Kenya, he used to work in a retail store.
Okay.
So it was a Indian retail grocery store.
Okay. Was that like a family business?
We knew the family.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like.
Yeah. It was all contained within the. Yeah. So you can say it was a family sort of.
Yeah.
Though he worked there, we didn't own it.
Yeah. So, what year did you migrate to the UK?
We migrated in 1974.
Do you remember when you moved?
Oh, definitely. we didn't want to come here. Me and my brother were the youngest of the whole family lot.
Yeah. And
we were supposed to, all our passports and everything. I remember clearly our passports were ready first, but we didn't come here first. My uncle's wife and cousins came here first, and then we came in August 74, and it was like because we lived in India for 5 years, and for those 5 years, which I remember a lot, that's my childhood basically, from 2.5 to 7. It was like the whole family was there, my cousins. We lived like in a big house, and for me it was magical. Yeah. Like a little girl growing up, it was wow. Yes, everyone's together, everyone was happy. We had loads of celebrations in the house, and it really was a good time. And then when we were moving here, we had to leave my grandmother and my other cousins in India when we were moving up to here. So I remember clearly we were crying from the day we left our house to the time we got into the flight. Me and my brother were constantly crying, and there was no stopping us. My poor mum.
Do you remember what it was like in the UK when you first landed? So.
Yes, because I remember clearly on the plane first. We came by British Airways, not even by Air India. So we were in British Airways plane, and there was The air hostess was English, so she didn't know a word of our language, and we didn't know a word of English. So for us, everything was alien, basically. It really felt like alien. So it's like I was so thirsty, I didn't even know how to ask for water at that time.
Yeah.
So she took me into the the kitchen area, and then because the tap was running, I could point to it, and she gave me some water. That's how bad the difference in the language barrier that was. And then when we came here, when we landed, my dad was there, so he, then it was like, oh, dad's there, mum's there, brother's there. And we went back to our rented accommodation that was there, and it was with an Asian family as well. Okay. So it was okay because we were kind of like back in our sort of family. And with the people that we knew, and also my cousins who were here as well. So it wasn't that bad when we actually landed and came into.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Did you move to London or did you go to Birmingham?
No, we were in London straight. Yeah, we lived in Balham in a rented accommodation, and the family that we rented the accommodation from were really nice as well. So and they had been here before, like from 1966, I think it was. So they knew, and then they helped us a lot, especially because there was a language barrier, as you know. And then my dad was there because he knew how to speak English. So it was like my dad did a lot of the the speaking for the family, basically, getting us into schools and filling the forms in and doing all that. So, but I remember first when I went to school, it was like, oh my God, it was totally different scenario. You just like, you just didn't know what to say or do, or, whether you would be heard or not, or it's just totally alien.
Yeah. What was this like when you went to school? What was the atmosphere sort of like?
The atmosphere was really nice because there was loads of kids there, but you just didn't know what to say to the kids because you spoke your language and you didn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a thing, but because there were other Asian people within the school, so what the teachers did was paired us up with another Asian girl. She was actually in my class. There wasn't any Asians except for me, so nobody knew how to speak my language. And then in my brother's class, there was an Asian girl, and she was a Patel, so she knew how to speak Gujarati. And because she had been living, she was born here, I think when her family came over, she knew how to speak English. Mm-hmm. So she kind of like was the medium for translation between us and the teachers. Mm-hmm. And then gradually but at that time, because everything was new and like we didn't know anything, there was this thingy that we needed to learn. So the hunger for learning was more deep in us at the time.
So did you feel like the teachers actually tried to integrate you into school, or did you feel like... I
think that luckily me and my brother were in a good school. Okay. So the teachers were really, really nice, and I have to say that because they did actually accommodate us. Yeah. And they did try to pair us with one of the pupils there. Yeah. And also I think there was a dinner lady who used to work there, and she was Gujarati as well. Okay. So she became like a teaching assistant type of role, and she used to help us as well. Yeah. And then it was like gradually we were picking up English language because they, through the picture cards that you get, the Pictionary things. So through there, that's how we kind of like started picking up words and started learning. Okay. But they did integrate. Yeah, they did try to help us get through that barrier.
Do you know whether that was the same case for like your other cousins?
I think my older cousins found it harder than us because we were in a primary school, and I think when you're in primary school, it's not, the racial biasness is not there because all the children are innocent and young, and it's different. Whereas when you enter a secondary school, I'm sure when the stories that I heard from my cousins, that they felt that they were being laughed at and mocked at because they didn't know the word of like how to speak English, and the pronunciation wasn't there. Yeah. So they faced a lot more than us because we were just starting to learn, and I think we were in a stage where everyone was learning anyway. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. So when you did when you consider racism towards you in particular, when you were a kid, where would you say that came from? Just like general people?
Yes, and kids as well, because when we down our streets, when we used to play, on this in those days you could play on the streets, so
Yeah.
so it was like when we used to play on the streets, there was a racial biasness there, because there was a couple of English girls there and boys, and they used to sort of like not try to integrate us, or not allow us to play with them, because they just felt, oh, you don't know anything, or
Yeah.
and they used to call us packies. I think I remember that clearly, because they used to shout packies, "Oh, you packy, oh, you packy," and I knew like that's the initial racism. That's the first racism I think I heard and faced.
Yeah, I think it's like, so like, do you think that when that word is used, it takes you back to when it was first? Like, you were called.
Yeah, Well, when I hear it now, and also when I hear it like in tabloids and newspapers and stuff, when people say things, I do feel that it does take me back to that, because I remember that clearly.
Yeah.
That was my first ever, because I was thinking, why are you calling me Paki? I'm not a Pakistani. For me, it was like, well, I'm not Paki anyway, so why are you calling me Paki? But at that time and point, for me, it was like, why are you calling me Pakistani? Because I didn't know that they didn't know the difference between Pakis and Indians. It was more like, you're all Pakis, go back.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So
then, when did you like specifically feel that it started to get better?
I think as we grew and we learnt the language more, I think when we because we became fluent in the language, and there was this hunger to learn the language ourselves, and to get integrated ourselves in the society, and because you couldn't do anything without the language, so we learnt the language basically, and then we became more integrated into the society, and then it was like and people started getting different, as time moves on. I think the initial racial harassment that you face is disappearing. I think there's an element of racism today, but that is not on the surface. It's not like how it used to be. Like, people openly call you Paki, or you'd have a racial attack, or because you heard of these things when I was growing up. You heard of the racial attacks and people getting beaten up, and also there was this era of where the punks were around, and Mohicans and hairstyles and stuff, and they were going around beating Asians and black people up. We heard all of that, but it never directly happened to us. The only thing that directly happened in the family was when my dad's uncle's wife and children, where they lived, because they lived in a multi-flat, one of those high-rise buildings. So they faced a lot, because every time on their doors they got sprayed, painted racist comments and stuff like that. So they faced it more. We heard about those, but we never directly faced anything apart from the calling of the name.
Do you think London was... So you were saying before how, before the interview, how Birmingham and like up north...
Yeah, because I think there was a lot of Asians there.
Yeah.
And there's also probably a lot of Asians in North London than there is in South London. So we were in South London. Yeah. So, and I think where there was a bigger community, I think they got attacked more, or they got faced a lot more than what we did.
So I think it's actually quite an interesting thing to look at, about the difference between females and males. As I know a lot of males got beaten up at school due to it. But did you hear any stories about anything that specifically happened to females compared to males, like any physical abuse or anything?
The only things was like when none of the females could wear any, gold jewelry or go out or anything, and if they had weddings and stuff like that, you knew that if they faced like, I know like one of my cousins' weddings, when the family were going back, they were attacked by some youth, and they had their chains pulled off, like the jewelry, the gold jewelry and stuff, and I don't know whether that was a theft attack, or whether like robbery, or whether that was a racial robbery. But they held racial abuse at them, so it can be construed as both. Yeah. But I didn't directly have any of that.
So do you think that even though school was like good and everything, there was sort of a gap between like Indian students and white students, like culturally, like when you think about home life, even here, it was a lot different to other like white families.
Yes, probably because we always used to just like from home we went to school we went back to home, so there wasn't that integration after school with anyone. It was just straight back home, and then because you had lots to do at home anyway, because you were supporting the family around you. So you were supporting your mum and dad, because your mum probably didn't know any English, and she for her to learn English, it was different to you learning English. So you were mostly at home trying to support the whole family and pull everyone to. It was a total different scenario than it is today for kids to actually go out and integrate and mingle than it was back then.
Yeah.
Because back then it was more like the parents were a bit more like, oh, you can't, just in case you might get attacked, or there'll be racial abuse or racial attack or anything like that. So there was that curfew more than there is now.
Do you think your parents also had like expectations of you when you went to school?
Sorry?
So like my dad used to tell me stories about my papa being quite
strict.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and like not really having a good relationship with his parents. And then you kind of see that general sort of curve with other Asian families. So from like from the generation like before yours, is in there's sort of a gap, because when you came here, it was like difficult, and I don't know.
I think the difficulty was the fact that because you come from an Asian background and they expect. There's this thing that you're supposed to come home straight after school. There's no don't linger about. You can't go out too much.
Yeah.
So there was that curfews in place, but apart from that, I don't think there was. I mean, they expected Asian parents expect a lot more from you than as a Asian child growing up. They expect a lot from you than I think a normal. English or black or other families where they would just expect you to get on and just do what you want. In our society or in our upbringing, it wasn't like you could do it what you want, and it was like it was mapped. You go to school, you do well, and if you don't do well, then yes, there was like anger from the parents. And then I don't think it's separated, because because the fact that we came from another country to this, and the barrier was there for us to learn and not because we didn't know anything and we wanted to integrate ourselves. So there was that hunger in us to learn as well and to get ahead. And you always felt when you were growing up that you didn't know as much as the other English person next to you, that they knew better than you, or they were doing more well than you because your language wasn't good enough. So you always felt that second class sort of thingy, so you always wanted to better yourself. So, and then I think the parents helped in the thing that they took an interest in saying you have to do, although they didn't know this education, how the education system worked or in England, they just expected you to do well.
So like it's quite interesting the difference between like perspectives of people, like yours compared to like my dad's. He was just like saying how is, and even my uncle is, I think because they were boys and they just wanted to do whatever they did, and they used to just sort of not they like if my papa told them no, they used to just go do it.
Yeah, because, I think with the boys it was a lot more different, because they had to integrate into the society, and they had I think the parents had a lot more expectations from the boys than the girls. The girls were always sort of like, in a way, the girls were like, oh, you had to help the family and you had to get on with it. And I don't think in my case it was like we just had to get on with it. Whereas my brother, although he had a bit more freedom than I did as well growing up, but he also got a lot of flack for it because he always wanted to do what he wanted to do, and my dad was always like, oh, why?
Do you think there's anything that should be highlighted when considering like the experience of Indians when they migrated? So
Yes, the language barrier. I think there should be like not like a like a some sort of well, normally because we Asians, because when we tend to migrate, I think we always have another family or someone supporting us. So if you have that support, then yes, it's great. But when you don't have that support and you don't have anyone, then the first thing is to have that language barrier, and also to have, I don't know, some sort of a guardian, so that you could someone to help you out basically in that first experience. Because I remember in the first week when we landed in this country, we didn't know anything. How it worked, what the money was like. You went shopping and you didn't know. All you did was buy things as you saw them. You couldn't ask anyone that what you wanted. So it was like you had to wheel yourself around the whole before you could get what you want.
Do you know what your dad? So what did your dad do when what was his job?
Oh, he was an injection molder in a factory.
Okay. And then did your mum work, or was she at home?
No. Mum was always at home. Mum was told, she had me and my brother, and so she had us to take care of. And also because Dad worked shifts, so it was hard. So he we was expecting Mum to be at home, and then Mum had 2 more kids after that. So I don't think she could. I mean, there was no chance of her working because of my sisters were babies then.
So you're talking about rented accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when your dad actually bought his first house, or whether he actually bought it?
No, he didn't, because my parents died earlier.
Okay.
So before, my mom died when I was about 18, and my dad died when I was 25. So it was we were just. But we were also the ground that we became then the family that hosted other families when they came over here. So my other cousins who came over always landed up in our house because my mom was at home, and we could then integrate them into the society. So we became like I was saying, if there was somebody there that could guide you through and help you through and guide you through that's how we became that sort of
that family.
Yeah.
That's actually quite interesting. And so when you're like a teenager and everything, so how did life work? So then when you're senior school and everything.
A senior school, you wanted to learn. So in terms of the education, it was all about learning, and I want to get learn and how to do things better. Parental expectations were high, very high of you. So if you didn't do well, then you immediately saw the anger or the disappointment in your family, in your parents. And it was quite evident on their faces and their words that they used to say. In terms of integration, you always there wasn't any after school activities for me, basically, because in a way I was growing up with 2 younger sisters as well. My mum wasn't well, so there was a lot of other things going on. So I think my span is a bit my life is a bit different compared to probably my cousins would have been. Because hers was a normal, they didn't have any of those worries, so it was totally different in that respect. But so for me, it was go to school, come back home, do homework, help Mum with the housework and stuff, and look after the kids and stuff, and then that was it. And then it was the next day. So there wasn't that much of integrating outside of there wasn't the after school clubs that I could go to or anything like that, because I was always needed at home. And then also because we also were hosted, we were the family that were the landing spot for my other cousins and family that came over from India and Africa. So we always had people around, and so you were always constantly supporting other people. And
going back to Africa and everything, did they ever tell you, or did you ever understand the reason why there was such big resentment from the Africans towards the Asians?
Yes, because they thought the Asians were prospering, and also that they were taking the jobs, and the community Asians were growing more wealthier than the people who were actually living there. And because the people who were Africans were in a lower jobs and stuff, I think that was the unrest that I heard about.
Yeah, because a lot of people talk about how the English and the Indians purposely suppressed the Africans because I guess Indians have that sort of caste system ideal, and you want to move higher up, and that was their sort of opportunity to move higher up.
Okay, I wasn't quite. I wasn't aware. So none of that sort of translated in the stories that I heard. It was always like, okay, they were, everyone was doing a job, and we were there to earn the money and have a good family life, I think. And then I think with my dads and uncles, it was always like, yeah, we went there, and they always had in the back of their mind that they wanted to go back to India.
Okay.
So there was never that thingy of we're going to settle down here permanently.
Okay.
Even when we came here, I think it was the same scenario. When we came here, it was like, okay, we'll live here for a little while, and then there was that because they had been shifted from Africa in such a way, and that happened. They always, when people moved here in the first instance, or our generations felt that, or the parents felt that they would have to move again back to India. So there wasn't that the settling thing never came into. It wasn't like purposefully we want to settle here and build our lives or anything like that. It's just, it happened, and because the children then grow up, and then you're well settled here, and then when you go back now to India, it's a total different world. Yeah,
because I guess it's different for every family, because every different family had a different goal.
Yeah.
In mind.
And also, not only that, but your English friends wouldn't understand that you have to, like the way if you prayed, and if you, they didn't understand I think as they do now, like you celebrate Diwali, they celebrate Diwali, and there's, like all these things. Back then, it wasn't like that at all.
Mm-hmm. So
even in schools, you didn't celebrate Diwali. You didn't get a day off for Diwali, or if you took time off, you had to have a reason why you're doing it, and you couldn't really take, or even on Diwali, we used to go to school.
Yeah. In your opinion now, are you glad that your family stayed in the UK for opportunity-wise for females, and because in India women don't really have the same opportunities as they do here. Right?
Yes, but now that's changing in India from now on. But back, in my days, I would say going back, I think yes, in a way, because it opens, it kind of like opens up your views a bit more, and also in terms of as a female growing up, like for me to go into science and choose science to study, so it did, opportunity-wise, I would say it was better here for girls than it is back home. And the fact that because back home probably with 16, 18, they probably start worrying about you getting married and not even doing degrees and going into further education or jobs even. At that time, I think when I was 18, if I look at my cousin in India, I don't think she was working or she could go out and do a job or anything like that. So in terms of that in comparison, yes, I think we are lucky that we came over here and that we got the education that we got, and the opportunities that we got.
Did you go to university?
Yes.
Which uni did you go to?
North London.
North London. Yeah, because that's such quite interesting. I think the fact that you've been to university, a lot of people in my family from the generation above us didn't go to university. I think only one or two did.
Yeah, so because I think that's also because it depends on when they came over.
Yeah.
So, and how the family settled in, and what they had to do, because I think we all had to work a lot harder compared to kids now, or the opportunities that you have now, because your parents are already settled and they know the education system, they know how the system works and everything. Back in those days, it was a whole different learning curve for everybody. And I think if you were younger, like in the case of my brother and I, was like 6 and 7 years old, so you're kind of like a child, just at the starting point of your education basically. So I think the opportunity is a lot more than somebody coming as a 13, 14-year-old, because that's a lot of different changes. You're going through your teenage years of hormonal changes, and plus it's a whole total different ball game of education, isn't it? So I think it depends on how you look. I think you have to compare the ages when people came over and.
Yeah, so it's like basically you're saying in your perspective, so it would have been harder for your dad that came in later on than when you all came over.
So like for my dad, he wouldn't be able to do he didn't do a degree or anything. He just worked in like factories and offices and stuff like that. They worked it. They didn't get any prestigious jobs titles. What I'm saying. They didn't go to that sort of level of because they didn't have that educational background. Whereas because we were, although we weren't born and bred, but we were like here at a very young age. So you went through the whole education system and you could make something of yourself.
So then when you think about, or even then, when you identify with like a nationality, did you consider yourself Indian over being British, or did like?
I think at that point in time it didn't matter it was like I am who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm in this country, and that's it. For me, it's always been like that. I am an Indian by birth. Because I'm born into an Indian family, and I don't think that anyone can change that. So whether I was born here or whether I was born in Africa or whether I was born in India, I don't think it would make any difference, because we are born into an Indian family, and your cultural views and your cultural beliefs are all there as part of your growing up. So you are totally molded as an Asian person.
Yeah.
But in terms of nationality, yes, I am British.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't think a nationality matters or anything. It's more about the person.
Yeah.
Like who you are as a person. I wouldn't judge anyone differently from my English counterparts or my black counterparts, or I don't think it makes a difference to me.
Yeah.
But that's my own views, I think, growing up.
No, there's a similar view that other people that migrate have. So
I don't think the nationality is a...
No.
Like,
is that how we consider ourselves?
Yeah.
We consider ourselves British. But I think that's everything. That was really good. Thank you.
Okay. I hope it was good.
Yeah.